Welcome to Theatre Talk. I'm Ed Shopes. Co-host Ann McBride and I are here the first and third Fridays of the month to tell you all about what's happening in the Mid-Valley theater world. Hi, Ann, and Happy New Year.
Hi, Ed. Happy New Year. And welcome, theater lovers. Thank you for joining us here on Theatre Talk. If you happen to miss one of our shows, you can listen to our latest Theatre Talk program on demand for 2 weeks following each air date by going to KMUZ.org. Just click on schedule at the top of the page, and when the calendar pops up, click on Theatre Talk at 9 a.m. Friday, and it will take you right to our on-demand streaming page.
Or you can listen to our most recent Theatre Talk shows on our podcast page at kmuz.org/theater-talk. We're really looking forward to an exciting year for Theatre Talk. In 2023, we've got lots of great shows opening and interesting guests joining us here from theaters throughout the Mid-Valley. And who are our first guests today?
On this edition of Theatre Talk, we'll talk with Loriann Schmidt, director, playwright Laramie Dean, and actor Rain Holland about Finding Jo March, a modern adaptation of Little Women presented at the Keizer Homegrown Conservatory January 13th and 14th.
And our second guests are director Isaac Joyce-Shaw and actors Simone Stewart, Allison Reed, and Jason Rock from the Pentacle Theatre 2023 season opener and Inspector Calls.
But first, let's get to the Theatre Talk calendar. Ed?
All right, here we go. Albany Civic Theater. Coming to Albany Civic Theater February 11th and 18th is Silent Sky by Lauren Gunderson. It's the true story of Henrietta Leavitt, a 19th century astronomer, which explores a woman's place in society in a time of great scientific discoveries. For information, go to albanycivic.org.
The Elsinore Theater at elsinoretheater.com. There are no stage plays currently scheduled at the Elsinore Theater. For information about local events and touring shows at the Elsinore, go to elsinoretheater.com.
Enlightened Theatrics is holding auditions for Sarah Ruhl's Dear Elizabeth starting at 10 a.m. January 14th at the Grand Theater. For information, go to enlightenedtheatrics.org and click the Participate header.
Gallery Theater at gallerytheater.org. They are opening their season with Into the Woods, one of Stephen Sondheim's best-known musicals. It runs February 17th through March 12th and is directed by Seth Rennie.
Keizer Homegrown Theatre at keizerhomegrowntheatre.org. Keizer Homegrown Conservatory will present the world premiere of Finding Jo March by Laramie Dean, January 13th and 14th. Now, the Keizer Homegrown Conservatory provides performance, learning, and connection opportunities in theater for young adults aged 16 to 22 who don't have access to theater programs in their schools or universities. Loriann Schmidt, the conservatory director, and playwright Laramie Dean and actor Rain Holland will join us later in our program to tell us all about it. And the first show of Keizer Homegrown Theater's 2023 regular season is The Odd Couple, playing March 10th through 26th. We'll have more information as that show goes into rehearsals.
Pentacle Theatre at pentacletheatre.org. The opening show of Pentacle's 2023 season is An Inspector Calls, playing January 13th through February 4th. It's directed by Isaac Joyce-Shaw, and we'll have an interview with Isaac and 3 actors from the production later in the show. Joe Dodge's acting workshop for actors 18 and older is now at Pentacle Theater's new rehearsal studio in downtown Salem. For more info and to sign up, go to tickets.pentacletheater.org.
The Salem Playhouse Acting School also offers classes, but for both kids and adults. It's held at Keizer Homegrown Theatre. Sign up by going to thesalemplayhouse.com and clicking the Classes tab.
Spotlight Community Theater at spotlightct.com. Their first show of their 2023 season is Pygmalion, opening May 11th.
On the college front, Western Oregon University at wou.edu/theater. Coming up March 2nd through 10th at Western is the Laramie Project by Moises Kaufman and members of the Tectonic Theater Project. It's directed by Michael Phillips. And the final show of Western's academic year is The Wolves by Sarah DeLapp, and it plays May 31st through June 3rd.
Willamette University at wutheater.com. Their next show of their 2022-23 season is The Secretaries by the Five Lesbian Brothers. This wacky horror comedy is set in Big Bone, Oregon, and it plays February 16th through the 26th.
At the high schools, McKay High School is on Facebook at McKay Thespians. And Tiffany Carstensen, the head of the drama department there, says McKay is the first school in Oregon to produce Disney's Descendants, the musical. They're in rehearsal now, and the show goes up at the end of January.
McNary High School, and it's on Facebook at Ken Collins Theater. They are doing Mary Poppins. It's coming to McNary Theater in January. Get your tickets at mcnary-theater.ticketleap.com.
North Salem High School has Freaky Friday, the musical, on stage at North, March 2nd through 11th. For more info, go to Facebook at NSHS Theater.
That wraps up this week's Theater Talk calendar. Stay with us for today's first guest, Keizer Homegrown Theatre Conservatory Director Loriann Schmidt and playwright Laramie Dean and actor Rain Holland from the production of Finding Joe March.
And after that, joining us is Isaac Joyce-Shaw and cast members from An Inspector Calls, opening at the Pentacle Theatre, also on January 13th. So stay with us. We'll be right back with more Theater Talk.
Today we're talking with Loriann Schmidt, Laramie Dean, and Rain Holland from Keizer Homegrown Theater's Conservatory about their production of Finding Joe March. Welcome to Theater Talk, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, Laramie. You're the playwright of this wonderful little play called Finding Joe March. Can you tell us a little bit about your script and fill us in on the storyline?
Sure. I'm the theater teacher at Hellgate High School in Missoula, Montana, and I often write plays for my students. And I had noticed that, especially post-pandemic, I was having a lot of students who were finally feeling freer or maybe even pushed to come out as gay or queer or transgendered. And I had been looking for a way to write an adaptation of Little Women that hadn't necessarily been done before. And I thought, what if I did some kind of a melding or a mixing of times, contemporary time and the 1860s when the novel was set. And I worked really closely with Lindsay Price, who is one of the heads of Theater Folk, the company that published the play. And she gave me a lot of ideas in the early 2020, January of 2020, before everything went south. And I spent a big chunk of the pandemic, the lockdown, writing and revising, and then was finally able to meet with actual actors to do some readings. And I wanted it to be not just a straightforward adaptation of Little Women, but something that was maybe more personal for a young person who was dealing with sexual orientation issues and gender issues. And so it ended up becoming a story about a young writer who has lost a sibling and is trying to cope with that loss by writing an adaptation of Little Women. So we were able to keep parts of the story and then the characters and some of the conflicts from the Louisa May Alcott novel, while making it more centered around a character who is finding themselves by finding Joe March.
Laramie, this kind of sounds like the play of the moment as a reflection of a play from the past.
I like that, yes.
When I think about Little Women, that play's been like done forever in lots of different ways. Why did you choose that particular play to reflect a contemporary social awakening here in our society as the vehicle for this?
Well, I have a lot of Little Women in my theater program. I think most theater programs have a lot of young women who are very strong performers and designers and directors and stage managers, and they often don't find themselves reflected in plays that are available, especially for high school. And I had enjoyed Little Women as a child. I had a series of classic literature adaptations where every other page was an illustration, which made them pretty accessible. And as a child, I was really more into fantasy and horror, but something about Little Women really stuck with me. I especially responded to Jo because she has a temper and she has younger siblings who frustrate her, and I felt a connection with that. I think a lot of young people feel a connection with that. And I mean, obviously, as you said, this play's been adapted, or this story's been adapted many a time. And I think that the reason is because it resonates with people. The recent film adaptation focused a lot on the queer shadings of Jo March. That's straight out of the book, and then maybe the life of Louisa May Alcott as well. So I chose it because it's still relevant. It still resonates with people, and it had a name, brand recognition. Although when we produced it at my high school 2 years ago, we called it Little Women, and I think that a lot of people who came to see it were shaken because it is very much not a straightforward adaptation of Little Women such as you can find in many other places. So I wanted something new and very fresh, and I think that this accomplishes that.
Jo March is a really strong, wonderful character. And I wonder, Rain, how you felt about portraying it.
I was really so excited to play Jo. I've always identified with Jo as a character in Little Women, and being able to play them in an adaptation where they're also dealing with very similar struggles with their gender and sexuality than I have. It feels great to be able to see myself represented and be able to play my own representation on the stage.
And she's such a strong character.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she doesn't fit in.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I can see how you could relate and enjoy doing that.
I really like in this adaptation, it's like beyond gender and sexuality even. It's similar neuroses, similar like hatred of itchy clothing. Like I truly like see myself in them that I don't usually see in characters that I portray.
Wow. And eating apples and reading books.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Loriann, how did you come across this work, and how did you find it, and why did you choose it for the Keizer Homegrown Conservatory actors?
To do that, I need to go back just a little ways because I was looking for a more serious, meaty work to do with my high school class in Beaverton. And the former drama teacher up there said, "Hey, I went to college with this really awesome playwright, and you should really look up some of his stuff. He's written an adaptation of Dracula, and that I found really compelling, and so I think you should look him up." And so I did. We performed his production of Dracula as the very first Keizer Homegrown Conservatory production this past summer. And I fell in love with his work and his voice and how he focuses on the not ordinary. And he selects pieces of the original text to focus on and to bring forward. And I was very excited to produce Dracula this past summer. It was a phenomenal production. Unfortunately, a little marred by COVID because our Dracula tested positive on day 2 of our production run. But it introduced me to this wonderful playwright's work. when I said, hey, do you got anything else cooking? And he said, oh, I've got this really cool adaptation of Little Women. Maybe you could read it. And I instantly fell in love and said, oh my gosh, this play is perfect for our community. It is perfect for the community of kids that generally come out for Keizer Homegrown Conservatory plays and the kids that I usually do drama with. So I was very excited to find this work.
And I get to see it. I didn't get to see Dracula, and I get to see this one. My husband and I are going to be in Portland next month for part of my book tour. I have my first novel, Black Forest from Inkshares, just came out as well. And the timing is really spectacular. Loriann had said, hey, this is going to happen here at this date. And I said, hey, who doesn't want to travel to Oregon in the grim heart of January? I do.
Yeah. And we're really excited to have him out because I know Dracula was really stunning and the kids really got into the show. And now already only a week into rehearsals and we are flying through the material because it's so accessible and so real, and the characters are so real and naturally written that things like memorizing lines and learning blocking seem very intrinsic. So it's really a well-written show.
And you have many other cast members that are really wonderful that I recognize the names for.
Yes, I am usually a big proponent of adults playing adults in shows, and I really enjoy the mentorship that can happen backstage outside of a director's purview. The kind of mentorship that says, hey, it really helps me when I run these lines before I go on, or I tuck my script over here and I glance at it on my way in. Those kinds of brief but meaningful moments really help encourage and nurture young drama students in their quest for wonderful acting experiences.
And that's what they're there for.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a conservatory. And so we are teaching, learning, doing. I just gave a cheat out lesson to someone who is very new and green in our cast, and it was a real aha moment for them. Oh, okay. 1 foot out to the audience, 1 foot towards the person I'm speaking to. And that really helps me a lot. So it really is a learning experience for everyone involved.
Loriann, we're going to have to exchange some teaching tips because I'm having a student struggling with that. She just can't get it. So I think we could talk about a lot of stuff when I get there.
Loriann, tell us a little bit about the Keizer Homegrown Conservatory and how it began and what the purpose of the conservatory is.
Well, the conservatory really is designed to provide performance, learning, connection opportunities in theater for young adults. And we're specifically targeting folks age 16 to 22. And in particular, we're really trying to focus on folks who don't have access to theater programs in their schools or universities. A number of schools have cut back their theater education programs, particularly private schools. And I know Chemeketa has struggled with maintaining their drama program. Not everybody can attend WU or Willamette University. And we also have a whole host of homeschool kids in the area who also don't have the kind of theater opportunities that folks in schools like West or South do. And so we saw this need to get experience and to get a full theater experience, not just a class here or a class there, but a real full-length production, complete with tech and lots of opportunities for learning.
There are things you only learn when you take a play from the beginning to the end.
Yes, exactly. And when you involve everybody in things like work days, everybody has to come to the work day. You're going to learn how to swing a hammer. Well, actually, not swing a hammer because nobody nails things on a set, but you're going to learn how to use a screwdriver. You're going to learn how to use a circular saw. You're going to learn how flats go up and how to paint things and how to paint a faux finish of a wooden floor and things like that. So it's really by doing all of those extra things that you really get a full experience.
Rain, I want to ask you about your experience with the conservatory and particularly with this show. If you had one takeaway from the script, the show, and your experience so far with Keizer Homegrown Conservatory, what would that takeaway be?
My takeaway is really that everyone in the conservatory has the opportunity to be something great, like, and have opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise. And I think that's really, really nice.
Oh, that's great. This sounds like a wonderful experience.
Loriann, could you tell us when the play opens and where it is?
It is going to be produced at Keizer Homegrown Theatre, which is located at 980 Chemawa in Keizer. It is right next door to their civic center. It's the cute little white building that used to be a schoolhouse, and the library is there and the museum is there, and we share that space with also with the art center. And it's a great performance space. It has around 70 seats, and so it's really nice, intimate theater, and provides a really close-in experience. The show opens January 13th and plays on January 13th, 14th, and 15th. 2 evening performances, January 13th at 7 and January 14th at 7, and then a matinee on Sunday at 2.
Okay, so you're just doing that one weekend and everyone needs to get tickets.
Yes, everyone needs to get tickets. It really, truly is a show that is very surprising. There are so many surprise elements, and I don't want to give too much away, but there's a lot of time warping happening. And when father writes home to his little women for the first time, he's using a cell phone and he's texting. So there's a lot of mashup of time periods, which is really thrilling for the audience.
And do you have a different war, or is it the Civil War?
It is the Civil War, and it's 1863, but sometimes things bleed in from the modern times. So
There's always a war happening.
That's true.
Always a war happening, yes. But I really enjoy the focus on the ability for us to provide theater for everyone, for a diverse population of gender expressions and sexual expressions. And it's really awesome to be able to have represented characters.
And it sounds like you're filling a really great need by doing this play.
Right. I think that theater opportunities are so slim for kids who don't have big theater programs at their schools. And so it's really nice to be able to provide that experience for kids who don't have any other place to get that experience.
True.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us, Loriann Schmidt, Rain Holland, and playwright Laramie Dean. Folks, the play is Finding Joe March, and it's written by Laramie Dean. It's at Keizer Homegrown Theatre, January 13th and 14th for 3 performances. The best place to get information on the show is to check the Keizer Homegrown Theatre Facebook page, where you'll find an event for Finding Joe March. Thanks very much for joining us, Loriann and Laramie and Rain.
Thank you.
Up next, our director, Isaac Joyce-Shaw, and cast members from An Inspector Calls, opening at the Pentacle Theatre, January 13th. So stay with us.
We're here talking to Isaac Joyce-Shaw, director of An Inspector Calls, opening at the Pentacle Theatre January 13th. And some of his actors have also joined us: Simone Stewart, Jason Rock, and Allison Reed. Hello, welcome to Theater Talk, you guys.
Thank you, Anne.
Hey, welcome everybody. Let me start with a question for Isaac. And then Inspector Calls is kind of a classic British drawing room drama mystery. It's not well known in the US compared to J.B. Priestley's competitors, including plays written by Agatha Christie. What compelled you, Isaac, to use this show as the opener for Pentacle Theatre's 2023 season?
Part of it, I think, is that it isn't, I think, as nearly well known as it should be. And also that it takes that kind of format of that, kind of drawing room mystery and does something with it that is totally original, totally different, and upends the format. It becomes a very different play than the one you think it's going to be when it starts.
Priestley wrote this play after World War II, and as I understand it, his commentary is on the social structures and obligations of the people and the societies who have to kind of mop up after the Second World War. Can you explain that?
Yeah, he was writing from a standpoint of someone who had been a veteran of the First World War, politically active most of his life. He had been, at the start of the war, the most popular figure in the country, above any politician or any other public figure, because of radio addresses he was making, which were basically inspirational broadcasts that came on at the end of the news, where he would talk about the world that they were going to build after the war. That got shut down by the politicians at the time because they wanted to control messaging. But towards the end of the war, 1944, he wrote this show in a week as the war in Europe was drawing to a close, and he wanted to get a message out that things needed to change, that they couldn't have. There had to be a change in the kind of culture that had led to two world wars and in just over 20 years.
So he did it by doing a drama, like a classic drawing room drama, and turning it on its head.
Yeah, I mean, he takes the kind of standard format of inspector comes, an inspector calls. A upper class family is very much like how you would expect a lot of Agatha Christie's to start. And a girl has died, the inspector says. But then as you get into unfolding of the facts, the moral culpability of it plays out in a way that's very different from a kind of standard murder mystery. It gets much more about social impact and about our connections to each other and our responsibility to one another as human beings.
And it's been described as a class conflict drama. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of this comes back to the context in which the show was written. He was writing in a society which, very much like ours today, was incredibly unequal in terms of distribution of wealth and power. It was a world where there really weren't many labor protections. It was a world where there really weren't any protections for any kind of disadvantaged groups in society, minority groups at all. There were exploitative labor practices to the point where the average life expectancy was 50s, 40s. And that's kind of the background to it. And he's basically using this end of the war moment to basically say, as all the politicians are meeting up in Europe discussing how they're going to divide up the spoils, that the societies at home need to be different too.
Wow, that's very strong. And it's very appropriate for this time.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're very much, I think, in a time where things are starting to get that direction again. We're seeing rising of the far right. We're seeing climate change not being dealt with in any kind of a serious way that's going to stop it happening or mitigate against the problems that's going to cause, particularly for poor people around the world.
It's good that you mentioned that, because I think that Priestley wrote this play a class struggle between the privileged wealthy and the advantages that they have, and the fact that they can ignore many of the world's problems because they are so far away from their daily lives. Meanwhile, the average person ends up paying the price for the indifference of the wealthy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think one of the other things that's really interesting about that is how he explores those dynamics differently with each of the characters, particularly in the family, of bringing out different aspects of how people abuse power in a variety of settings.
Well, let's dive into that a little here. Simone Stewart, you're playing Sybil Burling, who is the family matriarch in the story, married to Arthur Burling, the wealthy factory owner and politician. And you have a couple of adult children that are coming into their own. You have the help at the Burling home. Give us a little insight with Sybil Burling and what she represents in this story through her attitude of superiority towards others.
So Sybil is from what I would call old money. There's also not just class struggle, but there's also self-made man who is Arthur Burling versus old money, family wealth, family class, which is where Sybil comes from. And then the person who is engaged to her daughter, Gerald Croft, whose parents have a rival factory to the Burlings. He is engaged to Sybil and Arthur's daughter, Sheila. So Sybil comes from family money and family class status, where she, of course, was raised to look down on others that were not of her class, to not understand the struggles of those under her class, and to just perpetuate her own upbringing and her own class status. And what's really interesting is that there is a lot of commentary, the underlying commentary about gender roles as well. You see it in Sybil's character, you see it in her children, and how the children then maybe won't follow those same gender roles. Maybe they will because of their class, but maybe they won't. And there's definitely sort of like a stirring revolution there of the two younger adult children, maybe, breaking out of those boundaries that they have put upon them for their class and their gender.
Doesn't Sybil's daughter, Sheila, gain a kind of a new awareness as she learns more and more about the roles that her family might have played in the death of this young woman that the inspector is trying to solve?
Correct. And then, of course, her mother, Sybil, is just one of those women who's like, well, you need to stay in your place as a woman, and these are the things you will do. You will marry this person, and you will do this in your life, and you will just keep a home. And she goes through a huge journey and a huge character arc and realizes that she's not that person. She is of a different generation, and she's not going to just fulfill this role in the way her mother did. She's going to do it the way that she thinks will be best as a person, and not just as a woman of a certain class or society.
Well, Jason Rock, you're playing Eric Burling, the young man who is one of Sybil's children. And your character, when I read through the play, I thought that your character was one of the more interesting of the lot, because his youth is leading him to perhaps drink too much and not necessarily have the best judgment in terms of some of the things that he's doing with his young life.
Yeah, he seems to me to be the kind of guy who would try to escape the problems that he is having. And I think that comes easy to him with the drinking, and it just has become a habit. And I think the drinking also kind of acts as a medium to show how ignorant the parents are towards what he's up to and how he is. And I think it just really shows their their ignorance in that way as well. He is a very complicated character, and
I love characters with lots of flaws.
yes, he's got so many facets to him, and yeah, it's a fun one.
Some redeemable features too. I mean, that's one of the again, that's one of those things that attracted me to this show too, is that role is so multifaceted. And it's one of those roles that's just like, you just don't know what to think of this guy, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like, is he the bad guy with good qualities, or is he a good guy who's done bad things? Or, and there's like a bunch of different directions that you can go. And yeah, he's very complicated, very interesting guy, but I don't think he's all bad, but I do think he has obviously done some pretty bad things.
That sounds like a very interesting role to play. And I'm thinking you will grow as an actor playing that part.
I certainly hope so. Complicated roles are things that I like hope to do and like strive to do because it's challenging, and I hope it will grow me as an actor.
And Allison, you're playing the maid?
Yes.
And is there a class conflict?
Yes. So I represent not only the maid, but just the lower class in general, and how they basically get squashed by these people in power over and over again.
There's a mystery kind of at the core of this story about what these accusations the inspector is making. There's questions that linger and, may or may not get resolved at the end of the show about what is he saying that's true? What is he saying that's a version of the truth?
And does it matter if it's true or not?
Yeah, and Allison's kind of representing that mystery and that complexity.
Yeah,
Wow.
So I can't really reflect on my character much without giving much away, but it's true. I represent that class conflict quite a lot as far as, how this family interacts with me. They each interact with me differently, and they each have this own position of power over me. I want to say, like, for instance, some people view me as just an object. Some people view me as just a tool. And so it's interesting in that respect. If I could be any more vague, I would, but
it's another role too, where that dynamic, not just of class, but of gender roles comes out too, and of conflicts between gender and between people of different genders at different class levels is one of the things the show examines.
Wow.
Well, I just want to mention that there are some actors in the small cast show that couldn't be with us today, and I wanted to give them a mention. Gregory Jolivet is playing Inspector Gould, the mysterious police officer who calls on the Burling family in the middle of the night. Robert Barnett is playing Arthur Burling, the wealthy factory owner and politician. Lisa Grishenko is Sheila Burling, the daughter, a young adult daughter of she's a little self-centered and gains new awareness, as Simone mentioned. And Ty Hendricks is playing Gerald Croft, who is Sheila's fiance and the son of Arthur's biggest business rival. So that's a setup for a great evening with all of those all those characters. Isaac, before we go, what is the takeaway that you'd like the audience to leave the theater with at the end of this show?
What the author's intention is, I'm more comfortable speaking to that, is that people leave with some added level of self-awareness about how they interact with other people and how they participate as a member of a collective, which is what we are as human beings. There's another layer too with this show where Priestley examines, and we examine in our staging of it, can people change? Are people capable of being anything other than what their circumstances define them as being? And that is a question which to me lingers after the end of the show. And it's something that I think each audience member is going to come away with maybe a different answer to that question than the person sitting next to them.
Well, they are also wondering if I could change, right?
Yes. Well, and I think also too, it's just like there is a certain amount where it is not enough for us to change as individuals. We have to change as a collective.
Well, an Inspector Calls plays at the Pentacle Theatre January 13th through February 4th. It's written by J.B. Priestley, directed at Pentacle Theatre by Isaac Joyce-Shaw. And there are performances, evening performances on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 7:30, Sunday matinees at 2 o'clock. Doors open about 45 minutes before curtain. If you haven't been to Pentacle Theatre and you want to go and see this show, the easiest way to get tickets is to buy e-tickets online at the pentacletheatre.org website and click the tickets link at the top, or you can type in your search engine tickets.pentacletheatre, that's with an re.org. There's a new ticket pricing system at Pentacle this year, so tiered ticket prices range from $17 to $37, and frontline healthcare workers and students and people who hold an Oregon Trail card are eligible for a 50% discount. So come see the show. An Inspector Calls is suitable for ages 13 plus who can handle discussions of suicide, prostitution, and rape. This sounds like a thrilling evening and a show that's going to leave audiences with a lot to talk about around the supper table.
I hope so.
Thank you for coming and talking to us, Isaac Joyce-Shaw, and the actors, Simone Stewart and Jason Rock and Allison Reed. And we really look forward to the production. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's time to wind up this week's Theater Talk program. Thank you for listening. Next week at 9 a.m., you can tune in to Talking About Art with Joel Zack. Theater Talk on KMUZ is a proud member of the Salem Theater Network.
You're listening to Theater Talk here on Community Radio for the Mid-Willamette Valley, KMUZ Turner at 100.7 and 88.5 FM, and on KMWV Dallas at 98.3 FM HD2, and streaming worldwide at kmuz.org or on your favorite radio app. Theater Talk also has a podcast page, so if you missed one of our recent programs, you'll find it at kmuz.org/theater-talk.
Tune in to KMUZ on January 13th when Ed and I return with a brand new Theater Talk program to fill you in about what's happening in the Mid-Valley theater world. In the meantime, check our Theater Talk Facebook page for news and updates about live theater in the Mid-Willamette Valley.
And if you haven't yet joined in to support Theater Talk and the rest of KMUZ's great community radio programs, go to kmuz.org right now and click the Contribute button at the top of the page. And thanks. Until next time,
We'll see you in the front row.